Why don't we do this? Let's shift our discussion then to the first panel of the day. And before I get started, there's one other person I wanted to acknowledge in the room in the spirit of our bringing a wide range of stakeholders together, and that's Dr. John Andrus, who's the Deputy Director of the Pan American Health Organization, another one of our partners here. And so I want to acknowledge him and thank his presence and contributions. So thank you. And let me just switch to just help frame how we get started in this segment. I think that Dr. Lurie's remarks, Dr. Kieny's remarks help set the stage for the broadest reflection on the H1N1 situation. To try to set the stage, I think, for the beginning of the workshop and how the workshop's going to flow over the next couple days. This panel is to focus on getting a better understanding of the current state of vaccine manufacturing capacity in developing countries, and as such set the stage for the consideration of a framework, action steps, goals for moving forward in this particular piece that this workshop's going to address of figuring out how do we plan and get ready going forward. So I don't need to introduce Dr. Kieny because but she is the first presenter on this panel, and so I'd ask her to take a sip of water and start us on her second presentation.
Thanks a lot. I'm sorry and I apologize, but this is my last presentation. So I'm actually quite happy to share this data with you. This is we have been working on trying to understand how much vaccine was produced as compared to what was planned for production, and we finalized the data. We still have some analysis to be done, so there may be some refinement over the weekend. I've been helped a lot by Jeff Partridge, that the US CDC has graciously seconded to help me. And this is really, these data are completely new. Nobody's ever seen them, even internally at WHO. So I'm very happy to provide you with some information about how much vaccine was produced and also where is the capacity for pandemic vaccine and seasonal vaccine production. So some of you may remember that in 2009, in June, actually, we made some estimate about how much pandemic vaccine could be produced over a 12-month period. So what we did is that we had a survey which was sent to 36 potential influenza vaccine manufacturers. We had a 100% response rate. Really, I want to thank the industry really for that, both in developing and in industrialized countries. They had a tremendous response to this survey, and also, as you will see, to the next one. As you can see on this slide, all 21 current producers of influenza vaccine responded. 26 manufacturers said they would be producing pandemic influenza vaccines, and so the survey, what we asked them to assume when they provided answer. Remember, this is in June. So in June, the pandemic had just started, and we didn't know how much vaccine could be produced, anything about the yield, anything about the number of doses. So we asked them to assume that they would have the same yields at what they usually had for a seasonal vaccine. And as you know, this has not happened, not at all. The yields actually were much lower. What else? That they would all be producing what in their company has the most dose-sparing effect. This is, for example, that GSK would make GSK vaccine with adjuvant, that Novartis would only make vaccine with adjuvant, for example. So the most dose-sparing formulation, and also that they would be doing in their facility this and only this. Okay? So what we came up with, we had the weekly as estimate is what they provided. So when we summed up all the manufacturers, all the ones who told us they would produce vaccine, we came to 95 million doses per week, which then we multiply by 36 to have by 4.5 to have a monthly output, by 36 to have a 6-month output, and by 52, because there are 52 weeks, to have a potential yearly output, 12 months. So we came up in June and we published this data with the idea that the notion that really the overall maximum that could be potentially produced of pandemic vaccine would be a little bit shorter than 5 billion doses in 12 months. So in October, in view of yields and all this, we revised this estimate and we've said, but without any figures, that we said, well, really the overall maximum that could be produced would be no more than 3 billion doses. So where are we now in terms of real data, which is in the darker blue, and projection to March and June this year? So you can see that here you can see first on the first, let me go through the methodology. So again, the survey was sent to 30 known or potential influenza vaccine manufacturers. We did the analysis. We got a 93% response rate. Only 28 out of 30 we have a response from, but the two which are missing actually won't change anything or very marginally to the figures. So you can see the first bar on the left is giving you the amount of Northern Hemisphere seasonal vaccine which was produced. So you can see the overall 460 million doses were produced by all manufacturers globally. And you can see also that between July or August in 2009, where producers started to make vaccine, and 1st of December 2009, a little bit less than 500 million doses of vaccine were released. So we asked them to say released because, produced can be in many stages, but this was doses which would have been released by the company. The assumption of the manufacturers is that by March, this could increase to 1.2 billion doses, and not much more by June, because, of course, all the manufacturers will very soon start to be producing seasonal vaccine. How does this compare with what was planned? So we can see the both together. So you can see first, let's see at the weekly output. So instead of 96 million doses per week, the real production, if the assumption for the month to come hold on, will be something like 28 million doses. In 6 months, instead of having production of 2.4 billion doses, we will have less than half a billion doses, and we're going from a little bit less than 5 billion doses in 12 months to 1.3 billion doses. Where are the main differences? You may remember some of those who heard my presentation on the first survey, but we, of course, all these the companies are anonymous in here, and we have committed to the manufacturers to keep their individual data confidential. But we have aggregated the companies into two groups: the large company A, 7 of them, and all the others in company B. So many of the company B, of course, are either in developing or in middle-income countries, and many of them are domestic producers. So you can see that in terms of the total annual capacity for trivalent vaccine, that is a figure that we got from the first survey, that all the manufacturers together had said in June that they could produce something like a little bit less than 900 million doses per year of trivalent season vaccine if they would be using full capacity. In terms of what was planned for Northern Hemisphere season vaccine, you can see that 493 million doses were planned, which is very close to what was actually made, because as you can see, the number of doses which were produced were a little bit over 460 million doses. In terms of where this was produced, you can see there's not really that much of a difference. It was the companies A, so the large companies produced a little bit more than what was planned, and the companies B produced a little bit less than what they anticipated in June. In terms of pandemic vaccine, you can see in 12 months, you can see that the larger discrepancy with a percentage on the right column here is between what was anticipated as pandemic vaccine output in 12 months and what is likely to be the reality. So in the large company, you can see that actually the quantity which will have been produced, if everything continues as its prevision as of today, only 23% of the production output planned in June will have become a reality. It's a little bit better in terms of provision in the other companies, as they have only a drop, if I may say, of about a half of what they plan to produce. But overall, the drop, as compared to what was anticipated, is about there's only 26% which will have been produced. So, of course, there are many reasons for that, and certainly one of the main reasons is the yields that has been very much poorer than what was anticipated in June. So where are the manufacturers? So this is the situation in 2007. As you can see, these are the manufacturers that were existing before the implementation of a global action plan to increase supply of pandemic influenza vaccine. You can see really there are 3 pockets of vaccine production in Northern America, in Western Europe, and in China, also producer in China, Japan, Australia, and also production in Russia, of course. So where do we sit now? We have been able to work with new manufacturers since 2007 as part of a WHO technology transfer program that Dr. Jadhav will touch upon and mainly will be described by Dr. Palkonai later today. We have been working with 11 vaccine manufacturers or new vaccine manufacturers for influenza, a list of 6 in 2007 and of 9 in 2009, starting in 2009. We have also worked with the manufacturers to provide them with access to new technologies, and we have negotiated with the company Nobilon, who is now part of Merck, a license on the Russian live attenuated vaccine technology. As you know, the FluMIS, the live attenuated vaccine, was the first one to reach the market in the US and also in Russia. So we have 3 developing country vaccine manufacturers who do have now a license on this technology in India, Thailand, and in China, and 2 manufacturers either have or will initiate clinical trials of live attenuated vaccine very soon. So where are we now in terms of actual and potential producers? Well, we still have the same as you've seen in 2006 and 2007. We now have this addition of vaccine manufacturers. I'm happy that I've managed to do some animation here. And in Mexico and in Brazil. We also have we are working with 2 manufacturers in Serbia and Romania. They are also here in the room, as our colleagues also from Mexico. We have started to work with 2 manufacturers in the Middle East, Egypt and Iran, and very significantly also we have had now new manufacturers coming up in Southeast Asia, with one company working under the WHO Global Action Plan in India, and another one on their own. Companies in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in where am I? Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, and also with Green Cross in Korea. So where are we now? Of course, we were still lacking any production capability in sub-Saharan Africa, and we see this as really a cause of concern. We are lacking also production capacity in quite a number of countries on the Eastern Europe, the ex-Soviet Union bloc, and we see that these countries really need to have access to a pandemic vaccine should there be a need. So in conclusion, the global influenza vaccine production capacity has increased sharply to over 800 million doses trivalent season vaccine from 350 million that it was in 2006. And this is mainly due to the intensive investment program of the main vaccine producer, and especially the multinationals. The number of pandemic vaccine doses produced over a 12-month period is likely to reach only 26% of what was planned in June. And this would have allowed, should there have been a need, to immunize less than 1.3 billion people globally using a 1-dose regimen. Not to mention that the avian H5N1 needed 2 doses of vaccine. New manufacturers have been established now in developing countries, which brings hope for more adequate production capacity and equitable access in case of a future pandemic. But adequate production capacity is still lacking in some regions of the world, and in particular, Sub-Saharan Africa and Eastern Europe. I thank you for your attention.
I think we've solved our technical difficulties here, so let me introduce our next speaker. The way we'll do this is we'll have both speakers go, and then we'll try to have some time for questions. So let me quickly introduce our next speaker. You've got his incredibly distinguished biography in your materials, but Dr. Suresh Jadhav is currently the Executive Director of the Serum Institute of India. He is the past president of the Developing Countries Vaccine Manufacturers Network, and as you'll note, he has had an exceptional career of working in conjunction with academic institutions, multilateral organizations, the industry, and many others. And so we're glad that he's here and look forward to his remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and my apologies for this technical difficulty. And thank you, Marie-Paule, for making this happen, but for you, the participation from the developing world in this whole program would not have been possible. Not only in this meeting, but also in the preparedness for the pandemic vaccine. This whole gap started with you, I think. I still remember your visit in 2006 when we first discussed it, and when you initiated the whole initiative in February 2007. And the first 6 developing country vaccine manufacturers got the grants, which were, of course, coming from the US government, Japanese government, and the UN agencies. I'm really happy for the introduction, which was given by Dr. Laurie in the morning, who has given the background. So I will skip some of the slides. And Marie-Paule, also, thank you for your second presentation, which has also taken care of some of the information that could have come from my presentation. So, as I said, that the whole thing started in 2007 to increase the capability in the developing world to make this, to fight the pandemic vaccine. But that time we were talking about H5N1, and the whole idea started with the demonstration of giving a proof of concept by the developing country vaccine manufacturers that they can make a seasonal vaccine, and once they make a seasonal vaccine, then the strain was supplied by the WHO to make H5N1. All these 6 manufacturers who were initially sort of shortlisted, they gave this proof of concept and got the strain, and they made this H5N progress in the manufacture of H5N1. It was when it was about to go for the clinical trials, when in March or April 2009, the pandemic, that is H1N1, struck, and we were requested to change all our focus on H1N1. So as Marie-Paule has already said, that originally there were 6 manufacturers, now additional 5 manufacturers have been added. So there are 11 manufacturers who are working on the development of H5N1 vaccine. But I will take the example of Serum Institute only, just to give you a brief background, because I think Laszlo will, in his presentation, will talk about the other manufacturers and the developments that have taken place in the other developing countries. So for us, it was a huge challenge to start with, because almost about more than 1 billion population resides in India, and if you talk about the Indian subcontinent, it's almost about 1.8 billion population, for which we were supposed to sort of look for developing this vaccine. There was no demand for the seasonal vaccine, so there was no capacity in any of these countries except in China. And investment was also an issue, because if you only make a capacity and there is no requirement of the product, then what you will do with that installed capacity? So what was the major consideration for the vaccine development? That initially when we got the project, we looked at the technologies, and 2 technologies were available. One was the inactivated vaccine, which was the proven technology, and time tested, and the second was the live attenuated influenza vaccine technology, which was used by Russia for last 40 years and also by MedImmune in US for last almost a decade. We also looked into the inactivated containing whole virus and sub-unit virus preparations, established all the analytical techniques, developed the laboratory. We also looked into the different technologies like MDCK cells, Viro cells, and embryonated eggs. But at the end of the day, we again shortlisted and decided to go with the embryonated egg technology because of some of the IP constraints. So in this, we did establish all the processes, and we made the whole cell adjuvanted vaccine. And this whole cell adjuvanted vaccine was, when tested, was found to be as good as any available product which was available in the market at that time. And this was the time when we were ready with H5N1, and then we concentrated mainly on the H1N1 development. So we got our strains in July 2009 for the inactivated strain, and in August for the live strain. The history for the live is, as Marie-Paule has already told you, that this technology was with Nobilon. So WHO contracted and inked an agreement with Nobilon to make this technology available to any manufacturer who will sign a contract with WHO. And then this technology was made available now to 3 manufacturers, that is Serum Institute, and in GPO Thailand, and also in a manufacturer to the China. I think I will skip this, I will go here. That is the egg-based live attenuated influenza virus technology. In summary, what we have done, that there was an extensive community experience with the LAIV in Russia. This is proven for safety and efficacy. No evidence of either genetic reversion or the new mutant formation. Community immunity benefits, particularly with children. No evidence of increased allergic reaction in the children or adults. Vaccine capable of being produced in either eggs or mammalian cell culture. Protective value of mucosal immunity and functional antibody levels associated with LAIV. Ability of vaccine to protect substantially in face of antigenic drift. Immediate level of protection with LAIV, that is in the first 7 days. And the LAIV, all the virus reassorted with the avian H5N1, displayed high levels of protection in mice challenged with the H5N1 virus, isolated in 1997 and 2003. So today, this vaccine is ready, and we have completed the preclinical trials. And I am happy to tell you that our first phase 1 clinical trials have started as of yesterday. So this is the sort of device that we are using. These are the vials which are already prepared and are going. These are some of the other paraphernalia which is required for the delivery. And we are happy to inform you that today we already have a dedicated setup for the bulk production, dedicated setup for the filling and freeze drying. Vaccine to be delivered as an intranasal spray using a small spray device supplied with the vaccine, and estimated to generate substantial quantity of vaccine. The existing capacity that we have already put in place is 50 million doses per year, but this can be increased to additional 50 million, that is making it about 100 million doses per year if required. In addition to this, we have also developed the inactivated influenza vaccine, for which again the dedicated setup is already in place. Filling activity is in place, vaccine to be delivered as an intramuscular route, estimated to generate substantial quantity of vaccine. But when I say substantial quantity, which is much less as compared to the live attenuated vaccine, this will be just about 1.5 million doses per annum. The strains used is NYM-CX179A, which was received from NIBSC. Reassortment between APR 834 and A California 72009. And influenza vaccine is adjuvanted using aluminum hydroxide. Now, what is the current status on this? That the production and process analytical testing completely established, process validation, analytical process validation and stability is in progress. Acute and subacute toxicity studies completed. Teratogenic effect studies are already in progress. Clinical trial application for LAIV has been filed in the last week of December 2009. Permission obtained in the first week of January 2010, and clinical trials have already started. Similarly, for the inactivated influenza vaccine, the production process standardized and animal toxicity is complete. Acute and subacute toxicity studies are also complete. All other paraphernalia is in place. We had applied to the DCGI for the clinical trial permission in the last week of December, and clinical trial application was filed in the first week of January. Permission for the clinical trial was obtained on the 9th of January, and this clinical trial will start at around 15th or 16th of this month. So this is the current situation. Thank you.
Should we take questions from here? Well, we've got a few minutes here, and you've heard a lot this morning already. So let me invite questions from the audience. So kind of, as Dr. Lurie said at the beginning, this is really, and Dr. Miller, this is really to be an interactive session. So who's going to kick us off? Here we go.
I just want to thank the speakers. Please press the microphone.
And also, I'd recommend people identify themselves when they...
I'm Barry Bloom from the Harvard School of Public Health. First, let me thank you both, particularly for Marie-Paule for all that she's done over the past few years, pushing forward a very cumbersome bureaucracy to move at record speed. So she's been heroic. My question is very simple, and I think the answer would be very interesting. How do you see sub-Saharan Africa developing the capacity that is missing, and how can the international community be helpful?
Well, we did have, by the time we issued our second list of grants, we did have discussion with BioVac in South Africa. And really the main problem that there was there is they didn't have a business model yet in terms of how this would be sustainable. So in the future, we would like to again engage with BioVac, with South Africa, and to try to see how we can help them find solutions. There are also other manufacturers. If you use classical egg-based vaccine production, this technology is amenable to many. It's not very complex in terms of technology. So we hope that a number of countries might be able to start doing something. We're thinking also whether it would be possible to do something in Senegal, who does have a production of yellow fever vaccine based on eggs also. So we would really, if we manage to secure more funding, we would like to go proactively now, really look for manufacturers in the area of the world not yet covered, as compared to the previous two rounds where we issued a call for application and received proposals. So we would like to go and seek for applications.
Jadhav, you want to jump in? All right, let's see. I think we've got I got a couple hands. I'm sorry, please.
Mark Miller from the NIH. Also, I'd like to echo Barry's comments about the wonderful work the WHO is doing. My question is actually two. One is, you gave the rate of manufacture and supply, and does that incorporate if the strain were to be changed? Because that obviously would have some rate limiting steps in terms of the capabilities. The second is, you stratified the distribution of vaccines based on geographical aspects, and aside from national supply, is there really any difference whether or not the vaccines are manufactured in one region versus another, given the current market of vaccine supply?
No, of course, all the data figures that we have are taking into consideration the fact that the vaccine which will be produced is the same which has been produced over the past weeks and months, and that there will be no need for a strain change. If there's a need for a strain change, then it means also that this is not the same virus anymore, and we're starting again. In terms of whether it's important where the vaccine is produced, well, yes and no. It is important because if we are discussing about enough capacity to serve the whole world, we will be in a situation with season vaccine production of a surplus, of a surcapacity, because otherwise you cannot have the same shoe fit an infant feet and Dr. Bloom's foot, I guess. So it is therefore important for regions of the world, country, regionally or nationally, to consider how much they want to invest into production capacity to have a surge in case of a pandemic. It's a question of decision about health security by nations and by regions. And we cannot expect that the international vaccine producers, who are the all private company, would be able to maintain an over capacity just against nothing, just because they care about the health security of the world, and maintain this overcapacity functioning in the absence of a pandemic. So really, if we want to have a surge capacity, I'm convinced, and what we have seen in this pandemic also shows that you need to have regional production and in large countries, domestic production.
Thank you. Dr. Andrus, I think
Thank you, John. Just quickly to mention how struck I was with Dr. Jadhav's presentation on the turnaround when technology became available and how rapidly they were able to implement that technology, and commend you. And also acknowledge that probably in the Americas we would not have been able to eliminate measles nor rubella with our last indigenous case of rubella in February of last year without the support of the vaccine manufacturing capacity of the Serum Institute. So here again, examples where if done correctly, managed well, you can really see results. Thank you.
Dr. Ivanovic.
Yeah. Thank you, John, for these wonderful comments. But I think as Marie-Paule has already indicated, and I also said, that this has given us a tremendous opportunity in a region where there was no seasonal vaccine manufacturing capacity because there was no demand for the seasonal vaccine. This whole exercise has not only created a capacity for the seasonal vaccine but also for the pandemic vaccines. And if there is a proper political will and the education to the general population, the demand for the seasonal vaccine can increase, and then that will help us in maintaining that facility because it will be producing something which could be sold. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm going to take one more question if we could, and then we'll take our break. So.
Thank you very much. I'll be short. My name is Radu Iordache. I'm from Cantacuzino Institute from Romania. I'd like to ask a simple question to Miss Marie-Paule Kieny. In fact, we're working now on a project with WHO. The answer was if you intend or you think to enlarge the projects, in fact, which have results to grow the quantity of influenza vaccine.
Well, a lot will depend on what are the prospects for this initiative. We hope that it will be continued. We hope that we will be able, with our partners, with the US, HHS BARDA, with PATH, who's working with us now on some of the aspects, to scale it up. We are aware of the fact that giving support like we have started to give to Cantacuzino, for example, for a 12-month period is not sufficient. if you want really to have something which is established, sustainable, the support needs to be more intense than that. And we hope it will depend, I think, of also of a collective judgment that this community will have on the program and the advice that we will be given on its continuation or non-continuation to see what we will be able to do in the future. If I may, as I have a floor, just add 2 comments. And Laszlo will present to you the result, well, in very short, what the result having been obtained by the others. You will see, of course, Serum Institute of India is the largest producer we are working with. They are certainly not beginners, so they have been able to make very steady progress. But you will see that companies who don't have the same track record as Serum Institute of India, I can see my colleague from Thailand, Mr. Sit here, that Thailand has been doing extremely well. It was a little bit more intense for us in terms of technical support, but it means that it is possible, with a commitment from the manufacturers, from the donors, from the technical agency, it is possible to move forward. And then my last word about that is, you would be surprised, but Mark, you know, WHO, how much actually it is easy when you do want to move something in the bureaucracy that we have at WHO to manage to push it forward. It is actually a challenge, but it is also an opportunity and not that difficult. Thanks.
Well, let me see. I think our time is up for this first panel, and I think I can't imagine 2 better speakers to have sort of set the stage for us, both where we are as of today in terms of the H1N1. And thank you to Dr. Kieny and her keynote address, but then also to really set the stage for the next couple days of work on vaccine production capacity. So I guess I'd ask you all to, if we give another round of applause to our speakers and take a break. Thank you so much.